And political analyst Michael Gagan joins us now from British Columbia. Michael, good evening and thanks for your time. Your thoughts on these, quote, transformational projects that have been recommended to be fast-tracked, your views on the messaging and the initiatives?
Well, it's great to see some initiative in terms of major projects. I mean, of course, the biggest omission is where's the pipeline so Alberta can get their product to market other than the United States? Because if we want to become more economically independent from the United States, not to mention perhaps win a separation referendum, we should perhaps have that infrastructure in place as well. But other than that, I mean, it's good to see that the government's at least acknowledging that these projects have to go forward. And certainly the LNG project is one I applaud, because whenever we can replace India and China, instead of burning coal, they're burning Canadian LNG, we're reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So we're making the country more profit, more money, and at the same time helping the environment.
Michael, what challenges do you foresee for the Prime Minister and the MPO moving ahead with these projects?
Well, there's just over the decades at the provincial level, the federal level, consultations with First Nations, environmental groups, et cetera, there's just been more and more and more and more and more and more in the way of bureaucratic processes that have ground a lot of projects to an absolute standstill. And it's great for consultants. It's great for a burgeoning bureaucracy. It's not great for jobs and economic growth. So certainly, perhaps this new office, what it needs to do is come forward with a plan of how can they streamline these processes. So legitimate environmental issues, legitimate First Nation issues are still factored in, but at the same time, companies do have a realistic prospect of actually getting, a project through to completion.
Michael, you did speak about Alberta. Now, we know that Alberta and BC, the premiers, have had quite a spat over this proposed or talked about pipeline. Of course, both Manitoba, Alberta are missing from the file today, announcement today. But the reaction is not as severe as one would have thought from Alberta. It seems as though there are some sort of conversations really happening. And the Prime Minister was also asked about a pipeline just a few days ago, and he said that pipeline is in the pipeline. So your take on what's really happening here about that project?
Well, there are discussions going behind the scenes. I mean, I am concerned that there's a certain level of complacency in Ottawa about Alberta. Hey, we've been treating Alberta like an abuse, like we're an abusive spouse for decades, and they've put up with it, and they've put up with it. But I suspect that time is coming to an end. So I think Ottawa has to get serious about making Confederation work for Alberta. Otherwise, they will sooner or later go their own way. And obviously, that would have an incredibly economically devastating impact to the nation. In fact, it would throw the whole long-term survivability of Canada into question. So I'm hearing that there's discussions going on behind the scenes. I applaud those discussions. But if we're going to get serious about being more economically independent from the United States, we can't be in the current status quo, which basically forces all of our oil and gas from Alberta to go to U.S. markets at a discount, gets refined down there, and then we buy it back at a premium. And meanwhile, we're importing oil from the Middle East and various very questionable regimes to supply Eastern Canada. So, I mean, we have to grow up as a nation.
One quick check on the criticism that's coming in from the opposition. Pierre Poilievre time and again saying nothing new has been announced by the Prime Minister. In fact, the new office that has been created is more of a hurdle, and this is just a photo op. What do you make of that critique coming in from the opposition leader?
Well, it's a legitimate criticism, given that we've seen a massive growth in bureaucracy at the federal level, and certainly in provinces like British Columbia, where I'm from, at the provincial level as well. And so, where you once, years ago had one person, you now have an entire floor or building of bureaucrats. And so, yes, it could easily just be that. And that's why the challenge is for Carney, show us, demonstrate that this is actually going to be something that is going to act not as another barrier, not as another hoop, but an advocacy role to help get these things shepherded through, but also make some real recommendations in terms of how we can streamline this process so we don't have projects that take decades to get completed.
Right. Michael Gagan, political analyst. Appreciate your time, Michael. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.